Hello team, welcome to another ATPGEO politics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a very late night live stream where I'm going to be talking about the scandal that is erupting in the US that is, I think, going to strangle the bandwidth of information spaces over the next goodness knows how long. I mean, this is the sort of scandal that should really rock an international leader to the core, rock a country to the core, and would in normal times lead to somebody losing their job. But I don't know that that's going to happen this time around because Donald Trump appears to be made of Teflon. But anyway, that said, what has been going on? Well, of course, the Epstein scandal has erupted, and this could be, I don't know if it's intentional. I mentioned this before, but when the Democrats sort of scare quotes caved and the government sort of reopened, then you got discharge petition that allows Grijalva, the new Democratic Congresswoman, to be sworn in by Mike Johnson from Arizona District 7. That pushes a discharge petition between Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna over the threshold of 218 votes. That has been facilitated by the government reopening. And, you know, if that was part of Chuck Schumer and the senators who, and I think a lot of senators really wanted the government to reopen, if that was part of the plan, then they've actually played it pretty well. My opinion on the government shutdown reopening has actually changed. I was listening to David Frum talk about it today, and I agree with him. Actually, he had a video on the Atlantic where he was talking about how the Democrats, the Republicans, were never going to concede anything else, right? And so you could have had the government shut down for another 20 days, another 30 days, and actually nothing else would have been achieved. So, and I sort of talked about this on my video the other night. The Democrats, like, say what you like about Chuck Schumer, corporate Democrats, and you basically got the activist wing and then the kind of corporate Democrat wing, old school, you know, older wing, and the older corporate Democrat wing seemed to have won through and seemingly capitulated. But actually, it was probably, you're never going to know, but I'm guessing it was probably optimal because the Republicans weren't going to concede anything. And given that, the longer you keep keep the government shut, the complete opposite, as the longer you keep the government shut, the more chance you have of public sentiment going against the Democrats. And so while it was with the Democrats and while the Republicans were still being blamed for the shutdown, and while the narrative had shifted so that people now know that it's all about the Medicaid and Medicare and healthcare premiums, the Democrats had arguably got a narrative win. Now, many people are saying, no, they should have shut down, should have kept going. But actually, I think it would have, in the end, been too damaging, not least for the very people who weren't getting paid and weren't getting food. Anyway, that aside, the collateral of this was that the Epstein files now look like they could be published, but it's almost like the discharge petition isn't as important anymore because the House Oversight Committee, the Democrats in House Oversight Committee, are just publishing these emails, and Donald Trump is in trouble. He is badly implicated, and it is absolutely incredible. This is really good. Before we get on to the details about it, this is an interesting point from Ash Scott here saying, I worry that this is all happening too soon. By the time anyone is in the polling booth, they will have forgotten. They'll be back at worrying about the trans badminton player who won a game that time. It's just, what a great comment. There is that issue. And, you know, I was talking about how the Tuesday elections last Tuesday were really good for the Democrats, but actually, you know, that still leaves a year for the Republicans to react to that and go, oh my goodness, that was terrible. What do we do about that? And then get themselves organized. But I think, you know, there is an argument to say that, I mean, really, Donald Trump should be stepping down. You could have a JD Vance, Peter Thiel situation here where he takes over JD. I mean, people are actually talking about this tonight where JD Vance takes over, pardons Donald Trump, and Trump therefore gets away with it, and JD Vance then rules with the bidding of doing the bidding of people like Peter Thiel. But anyway, that aside, let's actually talk about what has happened today, and I will hopefully talk you through what has been going on in a very chaotic kind of news space. Let's start with actually Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna here on CNN. Just a wee little snippet.
Wait, I got to give credit to Lauren Boebert to walk into the.
So sorry, because I assume that everyone knows what we're talking about. Just to remind you that the discharge petition is a special type of petition, a bill or petition that forces a vote on the floor that was a 50-50 vote, and therefore they only need 218 people, and that requires only a couple of, well, in this case, 4 Republicans to cross the aisle. And those 4 Republicans are Thomas Massey, the guy you see on the left, Lauren Boebert, a very kind of MAGA Republican in trouble in the cinema that time, and anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nancy Mace. So 3 women and Thomas Massey. All of them are being heavily either like outright attacked, like Thomas Massey. He's being primary. Well, in his district, there is funding that's been made available for, well, not made available, sorry. Somebody has paid for an awful lot of adverts directly against Thomas Massey, like completely castigating him. And those adverts were paid for by a guy who is in the Epstein files. So it is a guy who is a big funder of the Republican Party. And it turns out, obviously, he doesn't want the Epstein files released. So he's funding adverts against Thomas Massey. So there's all sorts of activity going on against these people. And it's pretty brave of them to do this in a context where the Republican Party will just destroy you if you go against the party line. And these guys are not towing the party line. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace are under immense pressure. And in fact, we'll come back to this. Anyway, that's the context.
Wait, I got to give credit to Lauren Boebert to walk into the White House, the center of power, the free world, really, and to sustain that and to come back out and to be solid. And also to Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was all the speculation that they might take their names off, and they never did. So it's not a hoax. It's not a moot point. It is a very serious thing. There are 1,000 victims, and there are survivors who have had a press conference with Ro Khanna and I, and that's what we're fighting for, justice for them.
Did y'all talk to them at any point during this, as the White House was making clear they were targeting these members?
I talked to them. I don't want to say which one I had this conversation with, but one of them was told, we can't let Massey have a win. How petty is that? I mean, this is more than about political wins. It's about getting transparency and justice, which, by the way, this administration promised. You have the vice president, J.D. Vance, you have the AG, you have the FBI director. They've all done a 180 on this.
So the White House said to one of these members that they didn't want you to have a win here.
That's correct.
So these guys are being stopped, or Thomas Massey and the Republicans here, they are being super pressured by the White House. They don't want to win here because it could be kind of the end of the power in the White House. I mean, it could be the end of Donald Trump, or it could, there are all sorts of options going forward, and there's a whole spectrum of potential outcomes. And my guess is that Trump is Teflon, and he'll say fake news, fake news, fake news. However, we understand at the moment that things are serious. I mean, somebody that's getting it in the neck, as the Daily Beast says here, is the Attorney General Pam Bondi. The Attorney General is getting torched from both sides of the aisle over what critics call a shocking cover-up of Trump's ties to Epstein. And of course, she had all the files on her desk and was talking about like releasing them, and then really didn't, and then sort of went back and said there is no little black book type thing. There's no list, and it's all sorts of climbing down from this position of, her and people like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, the FBI and lead and deputy, before they came to power, were like, yeah, this is a deep state thing. There's a cover up. We're going to expose this. They get into power, and then they're like, oh, no, maybe not. Oh, sorry about that. Because I would assume it's going to implicate the people in power too much. The Epstein files just are. I mean, it's clear that they're full of stuff that is seriously damaging for Donald Trump. So bear in mind, there are 20,000 emails, right? As far as I understand it, 20,000 emails. And I do apologize, Ashcott, you're absolutely right. Trump is innocent. He's the greatest president ever. But that aside, 20,000 emails, that's a lot of stuff to go through. And goodness knows how much is actually in the whole of the Epstein files. Whether you've got multimodality here going on with audio and video and all sorts. I mean, just who knows? But anyway, this is a thread from Brian Krasenstein, who kind of goes through everything that's being released. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of these to give you a taste before we see the developments from particularly today. So Epstein to Larry Summers, this is an email. I have met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump, not one decent cell in his body. So if you are... I mean, I laugh. This is very serious. If you are being slagged off by a paedophile as being like properly bad, if a paedophile is saying that there's no one as bad as this person, that this person doesn't have a decent cell in their body, then that is one hell of an indictment. This should be PR cyanide. So Jeffrey Epstein in 2018 to Landon Thomas Jr. He feels alone and is nuts. I told everyone from day one, evil beyond belief, mad. Again, if you're a paedophile saying someone else is evil and evil beyond belief and mad, then poof, what does that say? Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. I want you to realize that dog hasn't barked is Trump. The victim spent hours in my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Again, implicating Trump as well. This idea that Ghislaine Maxwell admitted, and we'll come to this in a bit, that she claimed to told Blanche, Trump's former personal lawyer, who went to the prison and interviewed her one-on-one. And she said, well, they were socially knew each other, but they weren't really friends, hadn't come to the house. And then here, there's an email that is directly contradicting what Ghislaine Maxwell has said, and she's asking for a commutation of her sentence. She's now in a cushy prison, and it's all looking like Trump is trying to smooth her over and whatnot. Epstein in 2015 to Landon Thomas Jr. Would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? Now, we've also heard from Michael Wolff that he has seen personally himself pictures of Donald Trump with topless women sitting on his lap and a stain on his trousers, or wet patch on his trousers, and everyone's all sort of laughing and whatnot. So that is a photo that Michael Wolff has detailed. Obviously, that is going on Michael Wolff's word there. Jeffrey Epstein in 2015 to Landon Thomas Jr. Have them ask my houseman about Donald Trump almost walking through the door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in a pool, and he was so focused he walked straight into the door. Landon Thomas Jr. to Jeffrey Epstein in 2016. The stories you could tell about Trump. The implication is it's about Trump there. Jeffrey Epstein in 2018 to Kathy Rumler. I know how dirty Donald is. Jeffrey Epstein to Faith Cates in 2017 suggests he hung out with Trump around Thanksgiving. And this is something that's come out today that a lot of people are talking about, that in 2017, this was when Trump was president. Trump spent Thanksgiving with Jeffrey Epstein. That is a claim that you're hearing today. Emails between Epstein and someone unknown in 2019. Jeffrey Epstein said, Prince Andrew and Trump today, too funny. This is when Trump was on a state visit to the UK, I believe. Recall Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago. Unknown person says back, can't believe nobody's making you the connective tissue. Epstein in 2018 telling former Norway Prime Minister Thorbjorn Jagland that Putin can get advice about Trump from him. This is what we're going to look at in a little bit more detail later. And Steve Bannon is seriously implicated. So late 2018 email chain between Epstein and Steve Bannon about getting rid of Ivanka and Jared Pompeo and Jerome Powell. So Ivanka, obviously the daughter, Jared's son-in-law. Mike Pompeo was he Secretary of Defense? Was he State Department Secretary of Defense, wasn't he? And Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, still is. Epstein to Bannon, getting rid of Powell much more important than Syria and Mattis. I guess Pompeo, only one left, unless Ambassador Heather has a brilliant idea. Jared and Ivanka need to go. Wow. Journalist Michael Wolff in 2015 suggesting Epstein let Trump hang himself and use the fact that Trump was at Epstein's home and on his plane to trap him. This is the idea that Trump was just about to be in a debate on one of the news channels in the run-up to his election, and there was talk about how he was going to be asked about his connections to Epstein. And actually, this is not good for Michael Wolff, because Michael Wolff appears to be trying to give Epstein advice, as in like as you would to a mate type thing, and so that none of this looks very good for Michael Wolff. Late 2018 text between Epstein and someone else unknown says it will all blow over. They're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that. Epstein says, yes, thanks, it's wild because I am the one able to take him down. In other words, Jeffrey Epstein is admitting in an email that he has the ability to take Trump down. And then Epstein died while Trump was the president. Epstein to his lawyer in 2012, have one of your cronies asked to see the mortgage to Mar-a-Lago, cash from Electricians Union. His driver Matt was the bagman, later made an exec at the Public Co, and a $30 million loan from the casino to Donald Trump, backdated. Lots of dodgy goings on there. Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff in 2019, redacted, somebody worked at Mar-a-Lago. Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. The testimony of Houseman John Alessi confirmed it. Jeffrey Epstein sends photos to Landon Thomas Jr. in 2015, my 20-year-old girlfriend in 93. That's after 2 years I gave to Donald. And then so on and so forth. I mean, goodness gracious, it is insane. Right, okay. So now let's go on. OSINT Defender says yesterday's file release by the House Oversight Committee shows that former White House chief strategist and close ally of President Trump, Steve Bannon, exchanged hundreds of emails and met at least once in March 2018 with convicted sex offender and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Emails between the two include discussions about getting rid of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, as we heard, and other problematic members of the Trump administration, alongside talks about influencing politics in Europe and a strange list of names and words sent by Epstein to Bannon in June 2018, which included Prince Andrew. Of course, we know that Bannon, after he fell foul of the White House in Trump 1.0, went to Europe and started building this network of far-right populist entities around Europe, trying to link together a coordinated rise of the far right in Europe, which actually you're seeing arguably come to fruition now. So anyway, then we get to today, and Trump, it appears, as some would say, know that he's cooked, as he says here. He's cooked and he knows it. In an unusual move, Trump just ignored every single question about Jeffrey Epstein after the bill signing, and panicked White House staff started to kick reporters out of the room. It's never been more obvious.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President, are you prepared to negotiate with Democrats now?
Mr. President, on Jeffrey Epstein.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for knowing.
Mr. President, can you respond to these Epstein emails that were released today?
Well done, Mr. President. Great job. Good try.
So arguably people frantically moving around and whatnot. And then here, Trump just bolted past reporters and refused to answer a single question about Epstein. That panic tells the whole story. He's not afraid of the media. He's afraid of the truth. Or this is just very normal. When you're under pressure, get out of Dodge as quickly as you can. And that was the end of that. So we hear, I mean, this is super, I think, reflective, indicative that the White House held an Epstein crisis meeting or meetings yesterday in the building's most secure facility, the Situation Room. This is Miles Taylor, who again fell foul of Trump 1.0. Trump says there's, quote, nothing to hide. But I'll tell you from experience, the only reason you hold sit room meetings is when there is something to hide. And indeed, CNN reported on this as well.
The Trump administration and President Trump appeared to be in something of a full court press to try and stop the discharge petition from working. Sources are telling CNN that top Trump administration officials held a meeting on this issue, not just at the White House, but in the Situation Room. Now, according to multiple sources, the meeting was said to have included the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado. Boebert is one of the 4 Republican members of the House who has signed the petition.
Well, now, what that could mean is that they are getting Boebert not to commit to signing the petition. And that could be very, very meaningful. Like, all they need is one person of those 4 Republicans to switch, and the Epstein files won't be published. And of course, that should tell you everything if that actually happens. Somebody says here, Rolf Army says, to recognize how nervous the Trump administration is, you only need to listen to the statements they made at the G7 meeting and today's call that Antifa is a terrorist organization. I've not heard that latter bit, the terrorist organization part. I just did a whole video on the designation of Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan cartel, being designated a FTO, foreign terrorist organization. And that supposedly gives them, the Americans, the right to blow up boats. Of course, it doesn't. I set out that it is actually still illegal. And I really, if you get a chance to watch my video on the boats being blown up in the Caribbean, please go and do so, because I think it's super important and it gives you an understanding of really how dodgy the American government are being at the moment, to the point where the British government and the Canadian government are now not sharing intelligence with them from that theatre. Because they don't want to be complicit in illegal activity, which the Americans are committing. Now, if Antifa are named a terrorist organization, then that, with the same logic, the same analogous logic there, arguably gives the American administration the right to kill Antifa members. So, you know, that is pretty serious, but I think that's a classic bit of distraction there, if that is indeed the case, but I've not seen that. So thank you for alerting me to that. Right, to return, Ghislaine Maxwell lied about Trump never going to Epstein's house, directly contradicted by her email correspondence with Epstein, and she was rewarded for that lie with a transfer to a cushier prison. The cover-up is happening in plain sight. So she was given a nice prison. She was given this one-on-one interview with Todd Blanche, the, as mentioned, the personal lawyer to Donald Trump. And what she said to him was demonstrably false, and therefore send her back from whence she came, the more officious prison. Thank you very much. Everything that she deserves. I mean, when you listen to some of the survivors of the Epstein scandal, they will say that Ghislaine Maxwell was the worst out of the two. We hear not infrequently. So Brian Tyler Cohen says, in case you've been wondering why Trump rolls over for Putin at every turn. So now we're getting on to another dimension to this scandal, and that is the Russia dimension. I'm not going to go down all the rabbit holes that we easily can do in connecting Epstein to, say, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, who famously is a Jew that came across after the Second World War to the UK, and connections then back to Jerusalem, but also Epstein's connections, apparently or supposedly, or according to some, and I don't know if you can call them conspiracy theories anymore, because I think there's enough to warrant thinking that actually they're pretty plausible theories, that Epstein might have had connections to, say, Mossad and the Israeli government, and actually some of the blackmail going on here might have a lot to do with Israel. And you look at how Benjamin Netanyahu and his government at the moment can pretty much rely on the United States to support them in genocide in Israel or in Gaza. And you're thinking, oh, how do they get away with that? And you understand the power of AIPAC and the lobby groups in the United States. I'm not being anti-Semitic here. I'm just pointing out that the state of Israel has an inordinate amount of power within the corridors of power in the United States. And if it is true that there is a connection between Epstein and the Israelis, then they have an awful lot of leverage through blackmail through Epstein with incredibly powerful people. Now, I can't confirm or verify that at all, but it's a very plausible scenario, I would have to say. And there is evidence of monies going. There's evidence of Epstein and money going through Russia, indeed. So this is so important because it's not just about. I mean, it's as horrific as it is that young women, actually minors, are sex trafficked and raped. As horrific as that is for these individual people and their families, this goes to a state level, and this has potential implications that are far wider than the individual human tragedies that have happened throughout the course of this scandal. And this is potentially absolutely behemoth as a story. And I guess we're possibly starting to find this out, and maybe in time history will alert us to the true scale of this scandal. So Carl Cheney here says, showing another email. I'll just pull that up so you can't really see it there. Jeffrey Epstein said in emails that he had been advising the Russian government on how to deal with Donald Trump, one of several cases in which he widened his connections to try to influence the course of foreign affairs. In other emails, Epstein described his relationship with foreign leaders, advised Steve Bannon on how to increase his influence in Europe, and offered his mostly but not entirely dim assessment of Trump to those who asked. Epstein's bid to link up with Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, a few weeks before Trump met Putin in Helsinki. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself here. I can't tell you how important the timing is of this. I have routinely told you that the single worst point in foreign policy terms of Trump's first tenure was the Helsinki 2018, wasn't it? Helsinki 2018, the press conference where he was, just on the back of the kind of Russia collusion claims and the interference in the American election of 2016. And he was denying that the Russians had any interference. And of course, his own intelligence departments and networks were telling him, yes, Russia interfered in the American elections. He then went and met in Helsinki Vladimir Putin in a room on his own, no one else but a single translator. So no one knows what was said in that room. No one knows what went on one iota. But Donald Trump was in a room with a former KGB agent and dictator. He comes out that room with Putin. They have a press conference and he throws his intelligence services under the bus. And he says, I have no reason not to believe Vladimir Putin when he says that the Russians didn't interfere with the American election. And then he says, and they've even offered to come and help us check out the, what? The Russians coming over into America to check out the files, absolutely extraordinary. And it was so controversial that the GOP at the time still had some vestiges of responsibility and orthodoxy, and they called Trump out and he had to walk some of those claims back, and it was all kind of really controversial. But that was the worst moment of Trump 1.0, I think. But it turns out that what's important here to note is that there were emails concerning Trump and Lavrov that were, I think it was a month before that meeting in Helsinki. Epstein's bid to link up with Lavrov came a few weeks before Trump met Putin in Helsinki. After the fateful meeting, Epstein panned Trump's performance in an exchange with former Clinton Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. The most unsettling aspects of these glimpses behind the curtain often aren't evidence of an actual crime, but an unvarnished view of the way the world really works, how influence is wielded and policy is made by clubby, melodramatic power brokers. So the quote here from a Politico article, but Epstein would in fact, I've got the Politico article later, so we'll come to that in full. Yoni Escola here gives us a bit of a synopsis. We may finally know why Trump has been betraying the United States to push Russian interests over American ones. The newly published Epstein emails reveal something explosive. The emails show Trump far more aware of and was far more aware of and involved in Epstein's activities than previously proven. Many suspected this, but now there is documented evidence, which is the surprising part. Even more disturbing, there is now proof that Epstein was advising Russians on how to handle Trump, basically acting as a Russian asset. That is Epstein acting as a Russian asset. This suggests Russia had leverage over Trump and could blackmail him if it wanted to. If Russia knew the full extent of Trump's ties to Epstein, blackmail becomes the obvious explanation for why Trump has been pushing Russian interests over American ones, betraying his country. So the idea here is that we now have emails suggesting that Epstein, well, not suggesting, showing that Epstein was advising the Russians on how to handle Trump. Epstein was acting as a Russian agent or asset, and then less than a month later, Trump completely aligns with Vladimir Putin, the dictator, and throws his own intelligence services under the bus. Absolutely incredible. At bare minimum, Trump is a traitor, sexual offender, and paedophile or sex trafficker protector. So even if he didn't do, I mean, the point about this whole story is that we have on record Jeffrey Epstein saying to Michael Wolff, recorded, I showed you the audio of that the other day, I'm not going to play it again, but Jeffrey Epstein says, I was Trump's best mate, or, you know, we were best of friends for 10 years. Now, Epstein was saying we were best friends for 10 years. He's advising the Russians on how to handle Trump, maybe giving away some elements of blackmail there. But even if you conclude that Donald Trump didn't commit any sexual, direct sexual sort of crimes, if you're the best mate of Jeffrey Epstein and you've gone to his house a bunch of times, you put your nose up against a glass and you've seen all these girls, and like, you are going to know what there's no realistic way on earth that you are ever going to be the best mates with Jeffrey Epstein and not know this is going on. And these emails now show us really that Trump for sure knew what was going on. He's a dog that didn't bark, right? So I think Yoni Escola is absolutely spot on here by saying at bare minimum, Trump is a traitor, sexual offender, and paedophile sex trafficker protector who was and is willing to betray his country to protect himself. What does that say about those still defending him today or tomorrow? You know, I'm fairly confident I'm going to be on the right side of history. When I get dickwads on my threads, like there has been over the last few days, saying, oh, you've got TDS, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome. Really, dude, really? I'm pretty confident that history is going to be on my side, not yours. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm, you know, come and debate me. Come on my channel and debate me how you think this man, Donald Trump, is a wonderful human being, is the best guy for the job. You come and we'll argue this. I'm happy to argue that live on record because the guy is horrific. And everything that we're learning at the moment in the last 24 hours or so confirms what I've been saying for freaking 10 years now. It's funny. Benny Pie has been archiving all of my articles. I've been writing articles for a dozen years or so, and each place I've written articles for has either gone under, or what does that say about my writing? Or has cancelled all the writers that were not aligned to their position. So I've literally lost a writing job over being cancelled because we were too liberal and political, and so we all got about 30 of us writers got cancelled by an interfaith platform called Pathos. We were writing for the non-religious section of Pathos. And so I love debating people about how the left is always a cancel culture situation. I'm like, I've literally lost 2 jobs by being cancelled by the right. So, if you want to talk cancel culture, come to me, because I can freaking talk to you about cancel culture, because I've lost how many jobs have you lost because you've been cancelled? I've lost 2 jobs, right? I can't tell you about one of them because I'm bound to confidentiality, but I've lost the job for being cancelled. I've lost another job for writing for Pathos Non-Religious, and they're like, all of you atheists, you're too liberal and too political. We don't want you here anymore, even though you're responsible for, even though you're this part of the writing cadre of all these different faiths, and we were like the atheists and non-religious. So we were this much of the writing cadre, and we were 50% of their income and 50% of their clicks. And anyway, they cancelled us. When they got a new sort of right-wing, actually LDS CEO. Anyway, I've been writing for a long time about Donald Trump, and Benny Pie, that's where I was going. Benny Pie was archiving all my old articles, and I was going back and looking at some of the articles I wrote in 2016, 2015 about Donald Trump. And I was like, do you know what? I haven't changed my opinion. And do you know what? My opinion then was bang on. Absolutely, I was right in 2016, 2015, and I'm damn right now. And I'm not afraid to shout it from the rafters. Yoni Escola here says the Russia hoax was never a hoax. Trump was compromised by Moscow then, and he is compromised now. The Epstein emails show why Moscow was thrilled to have Trump in the White House. This is not speculation. It is documented. Back in his first term, Trump's campaign was run by Paul Manafort, a man deeply tied to Russia. In fact, he was pardoned later by Trump. Trump's team secretly met with Russians, accepted intel, and used it against Clinton and later Biden. That was not a hoax. It was collusion. Russia helped Trump win, and Trump repaid them by undermining NATO and defending Moscow at every turn. He acted like someone protecting himself, not his country. Now the Epstein emails add more proof. Epstein worked with Churkin, Russia's former UN ambassador, to help Moscow manage Trump. Epstein was also ready to meet other top Russian diplomats. Russia knew Trump's ties to Epstein and used them to leverage as leverage to blackmail him. So this is Jeffrey Epstein to Thorbjorn Jagland. Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insights on talking to me. So there you go. There may be other compromat, but this is there may be other compromat, but this is the one we have proof of. It explains Trump's pro-Russian and anti-Western stances, his refusal to pressure Moscow on Ukraine, and his betrayal of US interests to protect himself from exposure. Trump has been shielding a human trafficker and paedophile while selling out his country. He is compromised by Russia. The truth is out. Do not let anyone call it a hoax again. To the point where Politico has written this article, or someone has written this article, Carl Cheney again, and Nahal Tusi has written this article in Politico. Jeffrey Epstein claimed he gave Russians insight into Trump. Newly released emails show the late convicted sex offender's extensive network of foreign contacts, whom he corresponded with about Trump's policy decisions. Nearly a month, but I'm going to read this to you in whole. Nearly a month before President Donald Trump met Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Helsinki in 2018, Jeffrey Epstein attempted to pass a message to Russia's top diplomat. If you want to understand Trump, talk to me. Quote, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insights on talking to me, Epstein wrote in a June 24th, 2018 email to Thorbjorn Jagland, a former Prime Minister of Norway who was leading the Council of Europe at the time of the exchange. Lavrov was an apparent reference to Sergei Lavrov, Russia's longtime foreign minister. In the email exchange, one of hundreds released Wednesday by congressional investigators, Epstein indicated he had previously talked about Trump with Vitaly Churkin, Russia's forceful ambassador to the United Nations before Churkin died in 2017. Quote, choking was great, Epstein, the late convicted sex offender, wrote. Quote, he understood Trump after our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple. The exchange was among dozens that showcase Epstein's extraordinary network of international associates, whom he often corresponded with about Trump's first-term policy decisions. The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment about emails, but Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said at a briefing Wednesday that broader set of emails, quote, prove absolutely nothing other than President Trump did nothing wrong. Trump later posted on Truth Social, quote, Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown. Of course, that's nonsense. We know empirically from polls, multiple polls show that the Republicans were blamed, Trump was blamed for the shutdown. So, like, for him to use this as, you know, to claim that this is part of a deflection tactic is just empirically incorrect. He was referring to the US government shutdown. In the emails, Jagland said he was meeting Lavrov's assistant the following day and would suggest a connection with Epstein. It's unclear if anything ever came of the proposed contact, but Epstein would later opine about Trump's fateful meeting with Putin, which has panned around the world for his apparent capitulations to the Russian dictator, as I previously mentioned. Quote, do the Russians have stuff on Trump? Today was appalling even by his standards, wrote Larry Summers, the former Clinton administration Treasury Secretary and Obama administration economic advisor, in an email to Epstein on July the 16th, 2018, the day of the Helsinki summit with Putin. My email is full with similar comments. Wow, Epstein replied the next day. I'm sure his view is that it went super well. He thinks he has charmed his adversary. Admittedly, he has no idea of the symbolism. He has no idea of most things. He also called Trump's handling of the summit with Putin predictable. I mean, that's quite an admission that he has no idea of most things. I mean, I would broadly agree with that. I think this entire Trump 2.0 administration is a case of marionettes, puppeteers, and whatnot. Summers did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Days later, Epstein was flexing his overseas relationships in an email exchange with former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, telling him in a July 23rd email message that Bannon needed to be physically present in Europe to wield influence on the continent. Quote, if you're going to play here, you have to spend time. Europe by remote doesn't work, Epstein wrote. Epstein told Bannon he would organize one-on-one meetings with foreign leaders, but that he would have to stay for several days. Quote, the fear is that you gin up their hopes and emotions and then abandon them. I think you want to be an insider, not an outsider flying in and out. A representative for Bannon declined to comment. Epstein often relied on his foreign contacts to learn about their views of Trump as he obsessively tracked the new president's actions. And at other times, he simply showcased his deep connections around the world in emails with other associates. Quote, can you believe MBS sent me a tent, carpets and all? Epstein wrote to billionaire businessman Tom Pritzker in December 2016, referring to Mohammed bin Salman, who is now the Saudi crown prince. A tent, Pritzker wrote back. I think that is code for I love you, or maybe code for go pound sand. Better check your urban dictionary. Pritzker did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A year before he reached out to Jagland for help with the Russians, Jagland asked Epstein to visit him in Strasbourg, France, so Epstein could help him understand more about Trump and what's going on in the American society. Among Epstein's international connections was Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, a businessman based in the UAE. Sulayem asked Epstein 2 weeks before Trump's first inauguration if he should accept the invitation extended to him by Trump associate Tom Barrack, who oversaw the event. Barrack did not immediately respond for a comment to a request for a comment. Epstein responded that it would be very crowded, but might be worth it to make connections in Washington and New York before and after the festivities. Do you think it would be possible to shake hands with Trump? Sulayem responded. It's unclear if Epstein replied. Saudi representatives declined to immediately respond to a request for comment, and the Russian embassy in Washington didn't immediately respond to a request for comment, etc., etc., etc. So Epstein was this go-between between people who wanted an inroad into Donald Trump. Quite incredible. As Telvin Griffin says, in response to Rob Fardin saying, Jesus Christ, this email was less than a month before Helsinki. Now you understand why former CIA Director John Brennan said that the Helsinki summit was nothing short of treason. Former CIA director said that Helsinki summit was nothing short of treason. Now you see why Trump wanted to go after, and treason is what happened there, and we'll find out soon, he claims. Now, next reports. Russia may have received compromise on Trump from Epstein. A year before his death, Jeffrey Epstein attempted to reach out to the Russian Foreign Ministry to pass information about Donald Trump to Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin. Politico reports citing Epstein's correspondence released by US Democrats. Epstein wrote to former Council of Europe Secretary Thornberg Jagland, asking him to suggest to Putin that Lavrov contact him directly. Jagland replied that he would meet with Lavrov's aide the next day and pass along the proposal. Whether the contact actually happened remains unknown. The emails also show that Epstein discussed Trump with Vitaly Churkin, Russia's former permanent representative to the UN. Meanwhile, Democrats have released new documents from the Epstein case, claiming that Trump allegedly knew about the financier's crimes and often even spent several hours in the same house as one of the victims. The White House calls this another attempt to smear the president. And here we have someone else commenting.
There's so many email drops that this can get quite overwhelming. In this particular email, it shows that the Kremlin disguised a $100 million payment to Donald Trump as a brokered real estate deal with Jeffrey Epstein and some other person, but the payment went to Donald Trump.
Now, I don't actually know the details of this, unless it's when he sold his. There's a story of when he sold, but I thought this was before Epstein's time, one of his properties for well over the market value. It was something like he sold it for like $98 million or something like that. And it was only worth, I don't know, 30 million or something. And he sold it to a Russian oligarch. And everyone has been wondering, why would a Russian oligarch buy something off Donald Trump for way more than it's worth? I mean, to the tune of not just like, oh, here's a car, it's worth £1,000, but I bought it. Oh, silly me, I bought it for 1,500 quid. I've lost 500 quid on buying that car. No, this is like, here's a property I bought for almost $100 million, but actually I've kind of wasted $70 million. Well, I haven't wasted it because that is bribery. That is inroads into Donald Trump. So we know that has happened. I mean, all of this is, I've talked about this with Zarina Zabriskie and other people as well. Just, it is absolutely staggering. I simply don't understand how this man is president of the United States and how he passed all the kind of fit for purpose tests, but there you go.
There's so many emails, okay? And it's wild to me that what could potentially take this man down are emails. But her emails, my friends.
Oh, the Hillary Clinton emails. But her emails. Yeah. You want to see some emails? Yeah. Then this is another Politico article. Epstein files vote happening next week, Johnson says. Whisper it quietly, says Phillips O'Brien. But Republicans who are up for re-election next year seem to understand that Trump is becoming a big liability. So now the question is, like, where do we, not we, I'm nothing to do with this, where does the United States, where does Congress, where do politicians, where does the GOP, where do the Democrats, where does Trump go now? What happens now? And I think the last couple of weeks has shown the American public that Trump is not this kind of, golden touch. He's not this golden boy anymore. He's underwater on every single metric, every single domain of polling. He is underwater. The economy and immigration included. He is underwater. The Democrats absolutely smashed the Tuesday elections last Tuesday. I mean, smashed it. If you look at the stats, honestly, it was much bigger than many people understand. Like the demographics, like, for example, in the big three, You've got what the Mikey Sherrill, you've got Spanberger, and you've got Mandani, I think it was. All those three, the two governors and the mayoral race, women, something like 81 or 82% of women, young women under 30, voted for the Democrats there. Like the demographic shift there was extraordinary. And even for men, particularly in New York, young men as well was skewing much further towards Democrats. So, and then you've got Latinos and blacks and so on and so forth. It's just an extraordinary set of victories, but that also went deep into Georgia. And then we're seeing elsewhere, you know, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court votes and then the Senate's there. And the point being that, you know, the GOP is definitely in trouble at the moment. They've got a year to be able to do something about it, as I said at the beginning of the video. But something like this is supremely damaging. And you might start getting Republicans, and I talked about this, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 months ago, where I was saying that you're starting to see back then a few Republicans go, okay, I'm talking about like a almost grassroots levels where they're having these kind of debates, town hall type debates. And you're almost getting a sense that some Republicans are going, right, well, we've had Trump 1.0, Trump 2.0. We can't have a Trump 3 realistically. And so what next? We need to be thinking ahead, and Trump isn't the answer for ahead. So there needs to be something new and something exciting to get us going. Is JD Vance that? But no, but there was kind of this idea that we need to be thinking further forward. That kind of conversation is going to be front and center of many people in the GOP now. Like, I think now people are going to be realizing that Donald Trump is a liability, that the polls are not lying, that he is underwater with independents. It might be that the MAGA core base sticks with Donald Trump through thick and thin. Yeah, brilliant. But you can't rely on them to get you elected. You know, that is your hard ceiling of 35 to 40% for those really hardcore MAGA lot. Well, what about your independents? What about your swing voters? And I think you're probably going to get a lot more conversations now that revolve around, okay, what next? Where do we go from now? Trump is something of a lame duck. If we're going to get ourselves elected. So, you know, remember, people think about their own skin here, don't they? Of course they do. Republican politicians are going to be thinking, is my job safe? How do I stay in power? So they've got two options. One is they rely on Donald Trump and the White House cheating, so rigging the elections, gerrymandering the districts. You know, you go for the cheat option, or you go for, how do I genuinely get elected? And do I continue to stick with Donald Trump, but looking at the polls, I will not get elected, which means I lose my job? Or do I read the tea leaves? And I think you're going to get a lot of people starting to read the tea leaves now. I said to you last week, the Tuesday elections, I said to you, that is an inflection point. This is the time when Donald Trump's currency goes down. It's only downhill from there. You can talk about Trump 2028 and trying to hold on, but I'm pretty sure this kind of scandal will mean that ship has sailed. So, and I'll tell you what, rats will jump off a sinking ship big time. You might just suddenly get like this feeling. We've had this feeling that the Trump White House is fecking untouchable, right? That nothing seems to be able to dislodge it, to send it off course. That is executive order after executive order. It's just like plowing through, nothing touches it. And then you get a big moment like this, and I could be wrong, right? It could be water off a duck's back, and within a couple of weeks, it's still Mike Johnson saying, "Oh, fake news, fake news." But you could get, say, a discharge petition where Republicans then suddenly jump on the discharge petition. They can read the tea leaves and go, like, "Man, if I'm seen to defend a sex offender, right? If I'm seen by my electorate to be on the side of someone who's trying to protect Jeffrey Epstein, I'm going to be punished in the midterms. I can't afford to be punished in the midterms because I've got a mortgage to pay." Therefore, I need to think how best to get elected. Do I go with Trump or do I go the kind of Thomas Massey route? So this could be an interesting time ahead. So I haven't read any of your live chat here. I hope you guys are all right in the live chat. And just this is all stream of consciousness, and I think this is interesting. This is a kind of like not a canary in a coal mine, but just a reflection of how things are. This is a billboard, well, not a billboard. This is a almost like led by donkeys in the UK, but this appears to be in the US, especially since the spelling of paedophiles is the American spelling. So this has been projected somewhere. I'm going to, don't want a copyright infringement, but this is from Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that's the song for the beginning of the film, isn't it? Guardians of the Pedophiles here, and it's got a GOP. That's what the GOP stands for. So it has who you've got: Kash Patel, Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and I presume it's going to be JD Vance on the right. But who was it? Oh no, I can't see who that was. Maybe Dan Bongino. It could have been Dan Bongino there. So yeah, that kind of thing, I think is going to hurt. Now, Fox News. What does Fox News do? Ed Krasenstein here says, what is blatantly obvious? That Fox News is trying so hard not to talk about the Epstein files. Listen to Stephanie Miller here call out Sean Hannity and Fox News for ignoring the Epstein emails, and listen to Sean Hannity stumble and ramble like a fool trying to avoid the question.
Club in Palm Beach, Florida. That's kind of a big. You're a professional.
You know what else is
great
about Biden's decline is that Trump is all over the Epstein files, and I'm wondering if they're going to release those. Are you covering that tonight?
Not really, because the woman that apparently they're talking about is the one that said he was a gentleman and never did anything wrong. And the person that had a grudge was the guy that got thrown out of Mar-a-Lago 25 years ago. And by the way, when you get thrown out of a club in Palm Beach, Florida, that's kind of a big deal. And it's very humiliating and embarrassing. And he was a convicted pedophile. So I'm not exactly putting a lot of gospel truth in what he said.
Trump was mad that he was stealing his girls, but
it's just absolutely brilliant. I think I could watch that all day. I love how she did that. And the other thing about Biden, the Epstein files, it's just like completely switches the conversation. And Sean Hannity's trying not to have any of it, but it's so blatant that Fox News is just a propaganda arm of the Trump administration there. What else do we have? Another MAGA conspiracy theory dies. So Jeffrey Epstein here, interesting. And one of the emails says this: okay, these stories are complete and utter fantasy. I don't know and have never met Al Gore, and Clinton was never on the island. The telephone book is not mine. It was stolen by my houseman that is currently in prison for doing so. So this is Jeffrey Epstein himself admitting that Bill Clinton. So one of the claims from particularly from Republicans is that, well, Bill Clinton, who did know Jeffrey Epstein and had been on his plane, but people weren't sure of how much he was to do with the whole thing. And really, I think what was underwriting people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel's almost like dog with a bone approach to the Jeffrey Epstein files until they got into power was pinning this on Democrats. The whole idea was that the Jeffrey Epstein files were going to implicate a ton of Democrats. It turns out that when they got in, these guys, it looks like Trump's all over the Epstein files. And then you've got Republican donors. And then you've got all sorts of people that mean that actually, no, they couldn't really publish the files. And now you've got Jeffrey Epstein saying, well, Clinton didn't come to the island and I've never met Al Gore. So you're like, oh, man, these are all like conspiracy theories. Damn it. Now, I think there is an interesting question of why the Biden administration didn't publish these. So I'm pretty sure there must be quite a few Democrats thrown in there or people connected to the party. Otherwise, I don't really know why the Biden administration sat on these for 4 years. But having said that, the Biden administration had Merrick Garland that sat on his with his thumb up his ass for 4 years, rather than prosecuting Donald Trump. So go figure. And there you go. And that's pretty much what I have to say. I mean, goodness, I don't know if there's anything else to add. It's going to be interesting to see how, I'm just trying to look at a few other sources here. It's going to be interesting to see how the kind of social media side of things reacts in terms of people like Joe Rogan, right? So, you know, Joe Rogan is this, I don't know that he's a barometer as much as a driver of certainly young men's thinking. And it was these kind of bros, these podcast bros who drove a lot of the voting behaviors in the 2024 election. And if Joe Rogan's goes to town on Donald Trump, and this is a sort of subject that I think he would happily do so over, then yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So sorry, Alan Watkin, but Clinton is implicated by Virginia in her diary. To be honest, I don't know enough about what she's written, so I do apologize. And it may be that he didn't go to the island, but he has been to places like his New York house and whatnot. So absolutely, yep. Good point. Yes, so and that would explain, of course, why the Biden administration might not have. It might explain why the Biden administration did nothing. So where was I? Oh yeah, so you know, Joe Rogan coming out and going to town on Donald Trump could be really, really catastrophic for Trump and the White House. And I don't quite know what to think about Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, I mean, I hate the man. I know what to think about him generally. I despise the man. But he came out with the whole, well, the reason why they haven't published the Epstein files is because Trump's in them. And turns out that Elon Musk was exactly correct there. And then they kind of kissed and made up because Elon Musk knows what side his bread is buttered and he needs that access to power and money. But he's in an interesting position now where he could turn on and like think about, I mean, rather like the Republican, sorry, I'm just spitballing, it's a stream of consciousness, take it for what it is, but rather like the Republican politicians, Elon Musk needs to be able to read the tea leaves. And every Republican, right, has a choice here. Do you stick with Trump or do you look at this and go, yeah, no, my days of supporting him are over? And Elon Musk is in that same situation. You know, he is a monster. Elon is a monster. He manipulates the media to this day and to favor Republicans and division in society. Yep. I mean, goodness me, I spend most of my days shouting that to the rafters or from the rafters. So yeah, but he's got a, you know, he has previously used this as a stick with which to beat Trump. And, you know, he's got the opportunity to do it again and probably be on the right side of history. And, you know, he won't want to be tainted by this. So, you know, you might even see Elon Musk diverge again from the White House. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to look at all of the various, you know, well, all the dynamics from all these different sorts of areas. And right, just a few thanks. Just like to say thank you to all the members. Thank you to BME. Really appreciate that. Here's a little for a tipple from the Little Whiskey Shop. I've just got an order in from them, so thank you very much, and thank you for helping me to do that. I really appreciate that, and so does Mark from the Little Whiskey Shop. Mark Bisque, enjoy some music and relax a bit. So I shouldn't be doing this, right? I've got to get up early tomorrow. I've got to do a video before I go, and then I've got to drive all the way to Somerset to go for a big 90s music festival with a bunch of bands that I absolutely love. And 3 days of music, but I'm going to try and get a video out every day. So enjoy some music and relax a bit, have a drink on us. Thank you. And thank you for your support, Mark and Olin. I really, really appreciate that. Thanks for this late night update. Trump just brings constant insanity. Cheers. And that he does. He is Captain Chaos. Really, really is. Karen Spennock from Canada. ATP, these emails were just subpoenaed from Epstein's brother. Interesting. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but so there is I don't quite. I need to look into this, and sorry for being ignorant on this. But the House Oversight Committee, they can subpoena the Epstein estate. That's how they got hold of the book, right? With the birthday kind of cards or birthday celebratory inputs in. So they can subpoena stuff that aren't in the files already. And I don't know what they can get from the files, but I mean, these emails, I mean, did they come from the Epstein estate, or have they got these from the Epstein files? In which case, you know, how much can the Oversight Committee access the Epstein files? So I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, so they can obviously subpoena other people like Epstein's brother there, who's had previously had some pretty interesting things to say. Yeah, so here's an interesting point. This is Indie Darkstar, who says, I love that the UK actually held Andrew accountable. The US promoted the pedo king. Right, something that Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell were talking about a couple of weeks ago. And sorry to be a bit sort of pro-British here, but it's not to be pro-British. There's a question to be answered here, which is, why is it that the only people that have been done for the Epstein scandal are British? Like Ghislaine Maxwell, he's in prison now. And Prince Andrew, he's been stripped of everything, right? As much as can reasonably be done. Someone else as well. You know, these are you know, the British people that are involved seem to have been held accountable. The Americans that have been held that have been involved. Well, one of them is arguably the president of the United States. You know, what is going on that is the case? Sorry, my chair keeps deflating. So yeah, I think that's worth considering. They are from Epstein's estate. So the emails are from Epstein's estate. Interesting. So that's how they've got hold of them. They've been able to subpoena them from Epstein's estate and not from the files themselves. So just imagine what are in the files, right? As long as they haven't been destroyed. Yes, I am going to enjoy Ash. I saw Ash. I've seen them a couple of times. I've still got a 1995 t-shirt from Ash, which I'm going to wear to the Ash concert. Jesus Jones and Jesus and the Mary Chain as well. So both those bands, that's a sort of a combination there. Inspire Carpet, Sleeper, Cast. Yeah, loving it. Anyway, so Mandelson, thank you. That was the other guy, Mandelson, who was sacked as the ambassador to the US, to the White House. So yeah, three Brits have done for it, and no Americans seem to be done. And yeah, absolutely incredible. Obviously Epstein is dead, but you know, one wonders, and this is where these conspiracy theories just become more and more plausible as each day passes. Like, you know, was Epstein murdered? You know, did he commit suicide? I don't know that I could say either way. 1977 is a classic. Anyway, there you go. So thank you, Karen, for your information. Oversight Committee couldn't share them while the GOP reps were all at home during shutdown. Right. Okay. So, yeah, and this goes back to whether the kind of finishing of the shutdown was something that was done because they knew that this was going to happen. Like, you know, if it was that Chuck Schumer stopped the shutdown, not just because people were suffering and not being able to, you know, afford X, Y, and Z because they haven't been paid for 2 months, or, you know, SNAP benefits, or that were going to be challenged, or this or that. There is that element to stopping the shutdown. But if he is also playing for this to happen, I mean, that's very clever, because this is incredibly damaging, or at least it bloody well should be. But I mean, here is a problem. As Mitchell Bailey says, Trump will never leave the White House willingly. States should prepare for him to not let Congress take session in 2027. Yeah, I mean that. So the question is, you know, what happens next? What is the White House's next move? It's always useful to think, what would I do if I was? So not what would I do if I was JP with my own moral compass, because, well, I wouldn't have been doing half the things Trump's done, 99% of the things. But like, if I was Trump and if I was the White House now, how would I play this? You know, what would I do? I mean, this is bad, but we live in a crazy post-truth world. But you know, even in a post-truth world, do you get to a point where there's just a critical mass of too much stuff? The information is just too forthcoming. This, you know, all. I mean, the defense against what I'm saying is actually Sean Hannity on Fox News. Fox News probably aren't playing this at all. OAN, Newsmax, if they just sit there and continue to be obsequiously megaphoning Donald Trump and the Trump White House, then you could see a way out of this, because there are people that just exist in those information bubbles, those silos, where they never hear anything outside of those silos, and then, you know, that is protective of Trump and the White House. But I just don't know. My sense is that, I mean, this certainly should be the end of Donald Trump, but my sense is that this will be damaging enough. Yeah, I don't know. We shall see, I guess. At the same time, you know, if you keep an eye on Ukraine, there's all sorts going on over there with massive missiles. I did a very well-timed video on missiles earlier on, and it looks like they're using them tonight. But also Kyiv is under a lot of pressure as well, with a big attack on Kyiv. So anyway, crazy times. And Pierre spoke to me earlier. It's like, you always go away. Like, the times I've gone to either on holiday or to Ukraine, and like crazy things happen internationally, and like things I need to report on, and I always go away. And, you know, I'm going away for 3 days, and crazy stuff is no doubt just about to happen for the next 3 days. Anyway, I do hope I'm being fair to Donald Trump, really, and to the truth here. That, you know, I'm partisan by point of fact that I do not like Trump. I think he's a wicked human being. Like, he's morally despicable. But I hope what I'm saying is equally accurate, though, that I'm not kind of you know, my biases aren't skewing my interpretation of the data here. So I hope that what I've reported is pretty, you know, fair cop. But thank you for being here and listening and watching. I really do appreciate it. Okay. Just the final thing to say is, if you haven't liked or subscribed and all that kind of stuff, please do so. I would absolutely love to get to 100,000 subscribers. Not really for myself, but one of my boys really does want me to get this plaque. So, you know, do it for Oscar or something like that. Anyway, that's enough from me babbling on. Take care, everybody. Have a good night, and go onto the socials and look at what's going on in Novorossiysk at the moment, which is a port on the eastern Black Sea coastline, which is, I mean, goodness me, there was a massive explosion there, and it's a very impressive, looks like a big missile hit. So go and check that one out. I've sunk, you can see, look, I should be up here. I've sunk, my chair is deflating. It probably is a sign that I need to go to bed. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you for all your support.